Let me ask you, are near-death experiences always positive?
Absolutely not. The near-death experience, to me, the hallmark of the experience is the sensation of leaving the physical body, going down a tunnel, and then entering into a bright light. But then each person brings to the experience elements from their own life. I'll give you an example of this. Many adults report hellish or disturbingly awful experiences as part of their near-death experience.
I mean, they run into people that they had sort of hoped that they had seen the last of, that come back again?
Well, they have sometimes a judgment scene. Sometimes they feel that they're held morally accountable. One man said to me, this is what he said. He said, hell was having to relive the moral mistakes I made in my life. And so as adults, I hear these kinds of disturbing hellish visions that I feel come from the individual themselves. Now, children don't seem to have that, and that's why I called my book Closer to the Light, because children, the average child says to me, wow, it was really weird. I was floating out of my body, and then I saw a beautiful light, and I thought, forget my body, I just want to be with that light, but it couldn't have really happened. You know, that's the kind of typical thing a child will say to me, and they just don't seem to have that experience of hell, but listen to what they do have. Children frequently report living teachers as part of the experience.
An example?
Well, the child that we saw earlier who had nearly died of a diabetic coma, she said that she floated out of her body and then she was surrounded by her classmates and her teachers. And I think the reason for that is that part of this experience comes from within us, and part of this experience seems to be this light that comes from, I don't know where it comes from, but, you know, not somewhere, somewhere else. And that just as adults may have hellish visions, children incorporate familiar experiences from their own lives. And, you know, an 8-year-old child is just crazy about their teacher, and it doesn't surprise me that their teacher might show up in the experience. One boy told me a pet was in the experience. He said he was in the tunnel, and then that 2 family pets came, and he says, and they were nagging me back to my body. That's what he said to me. You know, that
they were ready for him to go.
Yeah, the pets were the ones that, you know, sort of decided that he was to return.
Why did you decide to study this?
Well, you know, I worked as a pediatrician since 1980, and I particularly worked in critical care medicine. I worked here for Airlift Northwest, which serves Seattle Children's Hospital from Alaska and Montana and the area. And I just happened to have the opportunity of working with so many critically ill children. And I have resuscitated dozens and dozens of children who were at the point of clinical death. And I just happened to come across a girl that had this experience. She was 7 years old, and she nearly drowned in a community swimming pool. And her pupils were what we call fixed and dilated, meaning that she had brain death for over 19 minutes. So by standard medical technology, she should have been dead. It was miraculous that she was even successfully resuscitated. And then to hear her tell me things like, I was floating out of my body. I saw a tube. I saw a tube coming out of my nose. And to tell me all the details of her own resuscitation was extraordinary.
When a child tells this story, what's the reaction of parents and the people around them?
Unfortunately, it is not, it's not as you'd like it to be. Many times children, first of all, don't tell anybody. One little girl said to me, well, I didn't think you were supposed to be able to talk to Jesus. Yeah. And what she meant by that was that, you know, people who talk to Jesus are crazy. And over half of the children that I interviewed had never even told their parents about this experience. So they are reluctant to discuss it. They think that they're crazy. They think that people won't believe them. They think people will laugh at them. For example, one boy, when he was in 3rd grade, his teacher asked them to tell us a story about the most exciting and memorable experience that ever happened to them. They were supposed to get up and talk about something interesting in their life. So he got up and told about his near-death experience. He was sent home from school for his trouble. And the teacher told him, I didn't want you to just make up something. I wanted something that really happened to you. And he was devastated by that. You know, even now as a young adult, you know, his eyes sort of well up with tears because it was real to him. These experiences are real experiences.
What kind of difference can it make for the people who stay behind, for the parents, the family, the friends, if they can accept this? Take the child at their word.
At their word, yeah. Listen to children. That's what I'm advocating. Is, you know, we as doctors and nurses, you know, and health professionals, we have got to take the stethoscopes out of our ears and start listening. And what I see is too often we trivialize or dismiss these experiences. And many parents have said to me, she's always making up these kinds of stories. One parent told me after the child told a beautiful near-death experience, floating out of the body, seeing a beautiful rainbow. And the mom said to me, I just thought it was because she had a high fever. But what we don't understand, and what my research documented, is that these experiences happen to dying people. I believe everyone, when they die, will have this experience. So therefore, the significance of this experience is for people to start listening to them, to bring back the deathbed scene, to reverse the isolation which is occurring to dying people now, you know, that we talked about earlier, to reverse that, and for people to come in and hear what's going on in the dying person's life. I believe that that'll allow the dying person to take control. But more importantly, what you were asking me is that these experiences have the seed of healing of the terrible grief that we feel when we're confronted with the death of a child or of a parent or of anyone. And I think when a child says, I'm on a rocket ship to the moon, we should understand that at least the dying process has been a beautiful and spiritual one for them.
One of the reasons I asked was that a few years ago I was at the bedside of a friend who was dying. And when he died, and in fact, as he was dying, the last couple of days of his life, you could feel it was almost like a tide going out. And when he died, the pull was very strong, and almost like the children talk about how hard it is to come back. Mm-hmm. You almost wanted to go with. You could feel it, and it was very positive and very powerful. And it would seem that it could be more comforting to people to know that death has this. It has the potential of being this as well as the frightening experience that it seems to be for all of us.
And that's why I wrote my book, is to let people know what the process of dying is. These children that have had this experience are no longer afraid to die. They don't have that fear of death anymore. And I think that when a parent knows, I mean, obviously a near-death experience can never take away the pain of losing a child. I mean, I'm not trying to say that. But at least it can be a seed of healing. When I hear children talk about their pre-death visions, oftentimes sort of intermixed in the experience is a wonderful message of hope and reconciliation for their family. And let me tell you another reason I think it's important. What I've learned from studying these children is that comatose patients typically can hear what's going on around them. Now that's been completely, well, I was never taught that in medical school, that's for sure. And here's why it's important, is so oftentimes when we die, we don't just sort of die, but we're actually hooked up to life support machines for several days. And then life support machines are typically discontinued, you know, sort of a joint decision between doctors and family. And I think that if we know that that person who seems comatose can still hear us, that's an opportunity to talk to them, to resolve some of the conflicts that we have. One physician friend of mine was telling me that he took that opportunity to tell his father that he loved him, and that my research was instrumental in getting him to understand that his father could actually hear him. And, you know, and I just think that at least it's an opportunity to say goodbye.
As you talk about this subject, it's clear it's a subject of great passion to you. It's changed you. Studying this has changed
absolutely. You. It has really changed my whole perspective, even on medicine itself, I'll have to say. When I started my study, I was primarily involved in brain tumor research and in studying the effects of leukemia on the brain and the various drugs to treat it. And I really saw this near-death research as kind of an aside and not really very important, just sort of a fascinoma, you know, something, you know, interesting. But what I've come to understand is that the near-death experience, the way we look at that really mirrors the way our society treats death and dying. And I could see a lot of things that I've done wrong as a physician. That's all I can tell you. In my book, I don't talk about, you asked me about what my medical colleagues think. I don't talk about that. I just talk about, I know I have been very casual or flippant with patients at the bedside, or I have delighted in the medical technology and the ability to resuscitate dying patients, and have just, in a defensive way, just focused on all the nitty-gritty technological details. And I certainly know that I was guilty of not actually talking to people or talking to patients. And now I understand that they have something really to tell us, so we have something to learn from dying patients.
What remains to be studied?
What I'd like to know now, here's one girl said to me, after I, gave her the 2-hour grueling interview, I say to him, well, do you have any questions? And this little girl, 5 years old, she said to me, but was it real, Dr. Morse? Did it really happen to me? Well, that to me is a question I don't think medical science will answer. I don't know if when they say they're leaving their body and entering into a beautiful light, is that heaven or what? But what I want to study is the transformation that these experiences cause to children who've had them. Because if I can document that the near-death experience causes a real transformation, not only of values, but in the way a person is, their whole psychological profile, then I think that that's a big step toward establishing that these experiences are in fact real and are not in the same category as, somebody having a dream that they went to heaven. Certainly no one's going to say that you could have a dream about going to heaven and then be spiritually transformed. And yet we are finding that these children are truly transformed by this experience of light.
So looking at your own experience as well, seems like you've been transformed by it.
In many ways. Certainly I'm not afraid to die. I was in the airplane, when you're in a couple of weeks ago, and you know how when it starts having that bumpy shakes, and you're, oh my God, this is it. And I was funny because just as quickly I thought to myself, or I heard myself thinking, so I'll find out what that light is all about. It's very different than the, usually I would have thought, oh my God, what's the family going to do without me, or, or whatever. And I was really puzzled by that, and that really made me understand that, now I understand that when we die, we don't just sort of go into darkness, but there's a wonderful light waiting for us.
Dr. Melvin Morse, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me on Upon Reflection. Dr. Melvin Morse, his new book is called Closer to the Light, Learning from the Near-Death Experiences of Children.
Upon Reflection is made possible in part by the University Bookstore, serving the East Side as well as the university community.
KCTS has developed a new means for you to let us know how you feel about programs you see on Channel 9. We have a special 900 number that you can call. Every time you see a program you particularly enjoy, call. Let us know. That way we can bring you more of the kinds of programs you want to see. The more calls the show gets, the more often we'll bring you more